Hello, my name is Mark, and I thank you so much for coming by today. I am excited about this discussion because we're talking about Schmincke Horadam Aquarelle paints. Now, the word aquarelle literally means in German watercolors, so we can dispel that mystery right there. But what I want to talk about is I've been using these paints for years, and I saw this 48 pan set. It's a half pan set on Amazon a long time ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And even though I have tubes and I have other pans, this really drew my attention because it's just full of convenience colors, and there's a couple in there that I wouldn't normally use, like gold or silver. Just not something I'm a big fan of, but they're in there. And I just really wanted to get this set because I love collecting watercolor sets, if you've ever seen any of my other videos. But the problem is it was really, really expensive. It was $379 when I first looked at it. And I said, no way, I'm not going to pay that much for watercolors. But then the price would come down to about, I don't know, $320. Then it came down to $280, which was still way out of my range. But over the course of 3 years, I watched that price on Amazon go up and down and up and down and up and down. And finally, recently, it came down to almost $200, like $211. And I immediately hit buy because I had enough Amazon rewards, points, and all that, that it was basically not an issue for me. So I went out and bought it. Now, what I'm going to do is talk about some things about Schmincke and why Schmincke for me is like painting with love and why these paints are so good. But what you'll see in the video is me actually taking this 48 half pan set and expanding it with 12 additional colors that I bought. So I wanted to expand this thing to a bigger set, and I've done this in a few videos where I've expanded sets, and here you can see I'm actually pulling off that mixing tray that I never use by just pulling the pin out. So I'm not going to get into too much of what's going on in the video. You can watch that as I go through this, but you can see pretty much me building this set, and I'm going to go through the swatching of all these colors, and I'll explain just why I love these paints as much as I do. So going backwards, let's talk about the history of Schmincke and why Schmincke is an important product in the watercolor market. It started back in 1881 when two German scientists, they were chemists, Hermann Schmincke and Joseph Horadam. They discovered the resin oil paint formula used by the classic Florence painter, an oil painter, Cesare Mussini. So they decided to start their company and make their own resin oil paints based on the same formulas, and they started the Schmincke Company. And their first line of oil paints was called Mussini, in honor of the painter. I should note that other companies were coming out with their own product lines as well. Winsor Newton was founded in England in the 1830s. Sennelier came from France in the late 1880s. Holbein was founded in Japan in the early 1900s. Caran d'Ache came along in 1915. Daniel Smith paints were founded in Seattle, Washington when I was a kid back in 1976. And according to M. Graham's website, they were founded just 25 years ago in Portland, Oregon. Magello came out of Korea in 2002, and Core, they came in 2014 out of New York. Now, that's kind of news to me. I didn't just happen to know that off the top of my head. But what I thought was interesting was all these earlier paints, like the Winsor Newtons and the Senneliers, they were all being developed in different countries at the same time. So these people probably didn't know what was going on with each other. They were just working on the same things at the same time. So when you use Winsor and Newton, or when you use Sennelier paints, you realize that you're using something that's very unique to that region of the world at that time. And that's why I love these paints for different reasons. What I found, however, was the difference with Schmincke was the process with which they make it. German engineering, my car, I drive an Audi, which is a German car, and German engineering is, it's ridiculously good. And I hate to even get personal. When I had, some of you may know that I had brain surgery. I had a brain tumor back in 2012. And my doctor, I went through like 8 different doctors to find the right doctor, the perfect doctor. And the one I chose was a man named Dr. Casper. He was a neurosurgeon, and he was German. And the way he described what we were going to do and how we were going to remove that brain tumor, He spoke like none of the other doctors. He was very, very efficient. He was very exact and detail oriented. And he and I got along really well. We had long conversations outside of my medical situation, and we just talked about his work and all that stuff. And what I've come to find is that I gravitate towards German engineering and German products. I just think they sometimes lead the way in certain things. My car, I love my car, and I've had Japanese cars, I've had American cars. My Audi is just probably the finest car I've ever driven, and it's a German car. Going back to Schmincke, sorry, I'm kind of getting away from the topic, but going back to Schmincke, these paints are unlike anything I had ever experienced. And you can see by the way the pans are filled, they're different from other half pans that you can buy. Now, when you fill your own, there's a process in that. But the thing is with this process, so the Schmincke company was formed in 1881, and about 10 years later, a little over 10 years later, Joseph Horadam, which is what these colors are named after. If you look on the packaging, it says Horadam Aquarelles, so Horadam Watercolors. Joseph Horadam developed a process of milling the pigments over and over until they were so finely ground that they were just like a dust. They were just a powder. And he mixed that with gum arabic, which the whole thing with Joseph Horadam was he was very particular about using the finest ingredients. So the gum arabic that he got was from the Sahara, and he got really high quality products, and he paid the extra price because he wanted that. Now, this gum arabic it's a gum from a tree, a specific tree that comes from the Middle East, and it helps bind the paints. There's a whole, you can look up the science of gum arabic. But the thing is that Schmincke, they got theirs from a really pure source. Nowadays, a lot of gum arabic comes from cheaper quality locations. They come from cheaper trees that share the same properties as the original trees, but they're less expensive to put out. So a lot of companies will just spend less money on the gum arabic. Schmincke still uses that high quality gum arabic along with the highest quality pigments. So that's why these paints, right from the start, they begin with the highest quality ingredients. And I love that. So they've been using these products forever, since they've been making watercolors. And for me, this is what gives Schmincke the difference between other brands and the feel that you get from them. And it's really hard to explain until you use this product, until you use Schmincke paints. And I'm not trying to be kind of like a fanboy here. I love all the different paints I have. I love my Daniel Smith. I love my M. Grahams for different reasons. For me, and I've said this before, painting with M. Graham paints is like painting with your soul. They just have a very soulful feeling. They're rich and deep and just warm. And I can't explain it beyond that. Where Daniel Smith, for me, is like painting with your brain. They're very smart. They're very intense, almost scientifically formulated paints. I can't explain it much more than that, other than I get a feeling of when I'm using Daniel Smith, I'm using a very smart paint. It makes me feel, I don't know, smarter, I guess. I don't know. But with Schmincke, from day one, the first time I got Schmincke paints until even now, I have always felt like I was painting with love, because when you dip your brush into the pan for the first time with water and you see how the brush picks up that paint, it really truly is like none other than I've used. I mean, you can go to Daniel Smith, you can go to Holbein, you can go to Sennelier, and they're all great products. There's nothing wrong with any of them. But for some reason with Schmincke, I don't know, the color is just so amazing when you just pick it up. It just really works well. And it comes down, again, to their production. A lot of these companies nowadays, they use a tablet process where they create tablets of paint and then put it in the pans and ship them out. Schmincke still does what they did way back when, and they pour fill their pans. So they have a 4-stage filling process. It's really amazing. If you ever get a chance to see it, there's a video out there somewhere. I'll try to find it and put a link down below. But their 4-stage filling process is remarkable, where they will fill even just the half pan. They'll fill the pan just a quarter full, and then they put it in a drying unit, which they call a sauna. It's a sauna for paints. And they put it in there at 98 degrees for 3 weeks, just the quarter of the pan full. It sits in there for 3 weeks to ensure that all the water is evaporated completely. Now they repeat this where they fill it again halfway, put it in for 3 weeks. They fill it again 3/4, put it in for 3 weeks. And then the fourth time they put it in for another 3 weeks. It takes about 4 months for a pan of watercolor to be completed, packaged, and ready for distribution. It's an amazing process, and it blows my mind that they figured this out. So the paint that you get in a pan, it's actually processed the same way as the paint you get in a tube. So if you were to buy a tube of Schmincke paint, it's going to be the same paint quality that you get in a pan. That's not always true for other brands. I can't give you examples of which ones, but some companies, they produce two separate kinds, and I've seen that happen where the quality is a little bit different from the tube versus a half pan that you buy or a full pan that you buy. So that's pretty much it. But so that's the history of what Schmincke kind of does. Their style of this pour filling versus a tablet method, their 4-stage filling process, the drying and the heating in their paint saunas. It's a huge process, and that's why they've become such a huge kind of a pioneer in this industry, and they're such a big dog in the field of watercolors. But it's also why a lot of people don't like Schmincke, because they feel like Schmincke is just too big. They're that company that, oh yeah, if you paint, you got to use Schmincke. But there's a reason why they are the way they are, because again, that German approach to technology, to engineering, to the process, it really shows up in these paints. Now you can see I'm painting this swatch card here. My style of painting a swatch card might be different from yours. I don't do a lot of gradations. Some I will if it's a really dark paint, but you can see that this is a very quick process. This is one of the quickest cards I've ever made because, one, it's really fun and I just love to use these paints, but also because the way that this paint goes down, I don't have to wait for it to dry to do another layer. It just goes on really easy and really heavy just from a little bit of water. These paints, when you activate them with water, that gum arabic and the pigment just, they combine, and they really are magical when you start using them. And I feel it in my heart. I feel emotional when I use these paints because they're just so incredible to use. And that's why they're so expensive. That's why they're so sought after. And that's why they're so hailed in the industry as being one of the top brands you can buy for watercolor paints. Now, do I dislike other brands because of that? No, I love Daniel Smith. My more recent discovery was A. Gallo Paints. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. A. Gallo is a woman who started a company in Italy, and she is just making watercolor paints, but she has a different approach to hers. She uses rosemary oil in her paints. So when you paint with A. Gallo paints, you can smell the rosemary in the paints while you're painting. It kind of makes you hungry. Not really, but it's just a different feel and a different way of working with a new product. And I love A. Gallo paints for what they are. They are not Schmincke, and Schmincke is not Daniel Smith, and Daniel Smith is not Caran d'Ache. They're all different products, and they have unique properties about them. But if I'm going to go to one first, of all the sets that I have Kuretake, I have brands that you've never heard of. I have the Prima Marketing ones. I remember when Tio on his channel was talking about the Prima Marketing watercolors. I bought into those, and those were a lot of fun, but they were kind of just, kind of for a hobbyist, kind of for somebody who just wants to have fun with them. If you're really serious about watercolors and you really want to get a product that's going to, one, last you a long time, and two, you're going to be really satisfied with, then something like Schmincke is the way to go for me. If you have the money and you want to spend it on something like watercolors, I can think of better ways to spend a couple of $100s, but I waited 3 years to buy this 48 half pan set, and that was a long wait. And you can see the results. This is a quick painting of a flower that I just did just as a demonstration. It's a one-off. I did some other of the same flowers, and I took a little bit more time, and you can see those here. But I'm really glad you came by. If you have any questions or thoughts about Schmincke paints or the brand that you find the most attractive to you, I would love to hear about that in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'm trying to get back to making more videos, but I'm just grateful for your time watching. Thank you so much, and I hope all is well. God bless and take care.